Aloha, Starseeds and magical friends, and welcome to episode 9 of the Rachel Z Project podcast, which is all about the defense of video games as well as the Houses of Psychedelic Magic. You may wonder, what the heck do these two topics actually have to do with each other? Well, that would be the whole point of listening to this episode, correct? I was made in the 80s. And you know what also was made in the 80s? That's right, video games. Back in the day when I was in university, I wrote an essay called In Defense of the Romance Novel. And I fought to defend the romance novel genre from those who thought of it as trivial or tacky and thus somehow unworthy of any serious analysis. But I digress. Instead, I would argue that the universe loves a good love story. There is actually a beautiful quote in The Village, the movie The Village done by M. Night Shyamalan, that says, "The world moves for love. It kneels down before it in awe."
How could you have sent her? She's blind.
She's more capable than most in this village. And she is led by love. The world moves for love. It kneels before it in awe.
And so, in a kindred-like spirit, on today's episode of the Rachel Z Project podcast, we are going to talk about a defense of video games. There are a couple of reasons behind this topic, and one of them is that we are living in a sort of video game right now if we think of the way that reality functions. And no, I don't mean simulation theory or game theory or anything quite so right-brained as that. The defense of video games will dovetail quite nicely into the Houses of Psychedelic Magic because this is my little way of introducing new words and terms and spells and NLP to the collective human consciousness. The Houses of Psychedelic Magic do have their roots in the graphic novel that I am creating right now as they relate to the royal fixed stars and warrior kings of astrology. And being that we are in the midst of a new psychedelic renaissance, I have noticed a whole lot of the validation within the sacred and intentional use of psychedelics comes from an almost clinical and overly scientific scientism way of approaching them. I will not be disputing the research benefits of psychedelics, but rather be delving headfirst into the mystical, magical, and utterly awe-inspiring potential uses of the magical talismans left for us from our ancestors. There is a lot to cover this episode, so let's dive right into it. But first, I would like to thank and introduce you to my sponsor, Blue Goba, where you can use my code RZ15 for 15% off any magical items. Okay, let's get into the show. In defense of video games. My best friend growing up as a kid was a huge tomboy, and she had 2 older brothers. Because of this, whenever I would come over and play, we would play games like World of Warcraft, Doom, and multiple games on her Super Nintendo system. Myself and my sister also had some family friends that lived out on a farm who also had a Sega Genesis. And so we would come over, play in the farm, on the field, and come home and also play Sonic the Hedgehog and Tails and other games as well. Gaming to me as a kid was always just a way for us to bond with other kids and have fun. It wasn't until we received our very own N64 console, Nintendo console, as a Christmas gift one year that myself and my sister could play games at our home. There was a little corner video shop on the end of our street where we would rent games for $5 a piece. And our favorite games were GoldenEye and Mario Kart. I still believe that the old Mario Kart, especially the Rainbow Road, is still better than the updated Switch updated. But hey, that's me, and maybe it's also because, as I said, I was born in the 80s. Gaming itself right now has moved from the social couch play to more online gaming formats. And this has its own pitfalls, from not being able to play the game unless you have an internet connection, to games that are more about you purchasing add-ons than anything else, as well as having this whole idea of living out one's life within the digital gaming arena or gaming space. And that's where it kind of gets into the whole metaphysics as to how we live out our lives right now. It's really funny. When video games first came out, there was a media backlash about how violent these games were. Actually, if you look at a documentary, I think they kind of said that when Sega came out and Mortal Kombat came out, there was a big backlash about how violent these games were and how a terrible influence they were on society. And so touting that perhaps this is the reason why our society has gone to shit, right? I also feel like us as human beings in a social context like playing. But the construct at large, the AI construct at large, has taken advantage of this idea and has attempted to gamify our real life. And you can see this in the guise of social media followings. The gain and dopamine rush when you get likes on a post, an increase in followers, but this is considered a value in this fake AI world, right? Likes in social media do not equal intimacy in a real relationship. A like on a birthday post is not the same as calling this friend on your birthday. Bringing this back to the value of video games themselves, myself and my husband love taking a little bit of acid, aka LSD, aka Lucy, when we play video games together, especially the first-person immersion shooter, such as Halo.
An invisible guy. Yeah, you can see him on this way. It's on the radar. There's two guys. Oh, you got it. What? Turn! Look at him. You got it.
So what? Did he disappear?
He has a predator.
Yeah.
They're right in front of you. He's right there.
I didn't know there was a different guy! Oh my god.
Reload.
You are immersed in the game design, but you are also then meta aware of the higher octave video games that we are playing when we play the game of life. And Halo, back in the day when I was in high school, was what I used to play with my guy friends in the basement. And that was a big thing out in Winnipeg. Huge LAN parties with 2 Xboxes linked to 2 huge widescreen TVs so that 8 people could play at a time as Master Chief. Halo 2 will always have a special place in my heart because of the memories that I have that surround it. And Lucy has this way of amplifying your perception. You can see things for everything that they truly are. And so playing Halo on LSD has this amazing surreal experience for me personally. I had a mushroom journey once where I had a vision of Kevin looking at me before entering this blue light, a warning incoming game kind of thing.
Warning, incoming game. Warning, incoming game. Warning, incoming game.
And saying to me, well, you wanted to play on hard, right? And of course, it's in my astrology. I love a good challenge. Now, let's get into the Houses of Psychedelic Magic. I had mentioned in a previous podcast episode that there are 4 houses of psychedelic magic lined up with the 4 royal stars and the elements of alchemy in astrology in antiquity. Magic mushrooms, with their connection to the earth and the ancestors and grounding, are very much an earth magic. and they line up with the fixed sign of Taurus. Ayahuasca, or iboga, with a connection to the deep inner healing and the living waters within, are water magic, and they line up with the fixed sign of Scorpio. DMT and its brother forms with their magic rocket fuel to consciousness are fire magic, lined up with the fixed sign of Leo. And Lucy, or LSD, is an air element lining up with the sign of Aquarius and the current age of illumination that we are finding as a human species ourselves in. And with that, I think that this is a great way to end episode 9 of the Rachel Z Project podcast. I will be revisiting some of my earlier episodes coming up, such as episode 1 and episode 2, and do some follow-ups as I have some new fun stories to share and to provide context to them. I will call them episode 1.1 and episode 2.1 to keep with the very nerdy project manager self within. Remember, the Houses of Psychedelic Magic intel is intel that came to me within a psychedelic journey. I am not proposing to your own personal framework what these elements may be. You may find that it would be something a little bit different or distinctive to you and your own personal archetypes and storylines. However, as with everything, I encourage you to ask yourself any questions you may have and seek guidance from within your heart. With that, I hope that you have a beautiful day wherever you find yourself in the universe. Until next time, Starseeds, signing off.